All right, welcome everybody. Thank you all for being here for today's webinar as we continue to celebrate Native Plant Month in Arkansas. This webinar is being recorded, and afterwards the recording will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. We're also having a silent auction as part of our Native Plant celebration of Native Plant Month. So I want to encourage you to check out our online auction site that is biddingowl.com, biddingowl.com/ANPS, where you'll have a chance to win items such as botany books, Native Plant Society merchandise, actual native plants, as well as signed copies of the recently published Trees, Shrubs, and Woody Vines of Arkansas. This month, we're also hosting the Native Plant Adventure Challenge, where you can help raise money for the Native Plant Society by gathering sponsors who will agree to donate to the Native Plant Society for each native plant species that you're able to identify throughout the month of May. So if you'd like more information on that or to register for the Native Plant Adventure Challenge, you can email me at anps.president@gmail.com. I'd also like to encourage you to consider joining the Arkansas Native Plant Society, and you can do that online on our website by going to amps.org/join. If you'd like more information on us, there is our website, amps.org. We can also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Arkansas Native Plant Society, or you can email me at amps.president@gmail.com. Just want to give a couple of plugs for the next two webinars in our series. The next one will be tomorrow, May 13th at 1 o'clock, where Jay Justice will be giving a talk on called Who's on Top, an overview of the known associations between plants and fungi. Jay is a wealth of knowledge on mycology here in Arkansas. After that, this weekend on Saturday, Eric Sundell, this will be May 15th at 2 o'clock, Eric Sundell is going to give a presentation on the love life of ferns. Our speaker today is Beau Brown. Beau is a self-taught naturalist who has worked throughout the United States and Central America as an avian field biologist since 1985, including a 9-year position as a naturalist with the Missouri Department of Conservation. He is founder and director of First Earth Wilderness School located in Southwest Missouri and has led courses on foraging and nature education throughout the region for the last 3 decades. Beau's recently released field guide, Foraging the Ozarks, was published by Falcon Guides and came out last July, last year in 2020. And he's currently working on a new book titled Foraging the Tallgrass Prairie, which is expected to be available in the summer of 2023. Today, Beau is going to give us a presentation called Here Come the Invasivores, Foraging Invasive Species to Help Our Natives, or also Eat Your Wheaties, I see the updated title there. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Beau Brown to give us a wonderful presentation. Beau?
Hi, folks. Everybody see me? Yeah, I guess so. I see, I can only see one other person, but that's probably a good thing. I've put together a little PowerPoint today with they're not all horribly invasive. A lot of them are just the things that creep into your garden that you don't want there. Some are more or less agricultural pests and things like that. Some are the really bad environmental pests like Seresia. That's one of them. The garlic mustard's another one that's fitting up real good right now. There was one that I didn't include in this that I just couldn't find one redeeming quality about it, and that's the winter creeper, they call it. It's Euonymus fortunei, and it is absolutely covering everything around the river banks around here. So what we'll look at today are just, like I said, a lot of things you'll recognize. They're just yard plants. Some of them are shrubs or whatever that are invading into the prairies and things like that. So I'll cover a little bit of that, and if y'all have questions, like I said, he'll collect those up and we'll have a Q&A at the end of all this. So can everybody see the screen? I guess so. So I want to get this thing out of the way. So first up is garlic mustard. And that's a fairly new one around here. It's been in the US for quite a while, but I've got a creek nearby here that's my closest place to get to a real nice creek. It's called Panther Creek. And 3 years ago, that plant showed up for the very first time. And just in 3 years' time, there's carpets of it along the riverbank. I mean, I try to pull it up whenever I can, but you just can't even stay ahead of it. So as with all of these plants, they're all edible. They're things you want to take home and make a meal out of. Just take utmost care to not spread the seeds from one place to another. A lot of people mention they'll take a bag for like garlic mustard and things like that, and just put the bag over the plant while it's in the ground, and then pull them up afterward. Just pull the whole thing up out of the ground. They come up real easy. So that way you've got all the seeds collected, and then after you get your stuff that you want out of it, the tender tops and all that, then you can burn or trash or whatever to make sure those seeds don't get out into your yard or garden or something like that. So, but it's a really tasting plant, really good tasting plant. It does have garlic overtones. I've got some bouillon that I made with it. That's where you just take, I think it's a 3-to-1 salt to green herb mixture, and you just chop it up and put it in salt, and it takes on the flavor of that, and it keeps for a long time. So you can just keep it in your refrigerator and put a few tablespoons into your soup or whatever dish you need that needs little garlic flavor. So the next one is watercress. That's not really considered an invasive, but it can pretty much take over spring branches and things like that. I don't think it's doing much harm. It's one that most everybody knows. You can even buy that one in the grocery store nowadays. But I do mention in the text here about there's a parasitic snail that can lay its eggs on the underwater parts of it, and you can get liver flukes and other parasites from those things. So you always want to collect above the water line. And if the water is suspect there, a lot of times I'll just do a light vinegar solution wash on it first, and that will kill any bacterial stuff going on. Some people, if you're really worried about it, cook it just a little bit. I grew up with wilted, that was bacon grease wilted salad, I guess. And I put in the book that I was 30 before I didn't know vegetables didn't taste like bacon. So, but next one is autumn olive, and that's it's another one that's been around for quite a while. I brought it in for an ornamental shrub to plant along the highways, and it's gotten into prairies and other places where it just takes off. I really hate to see it be a pest because I just love the berries on them. The berries are real sweet and tart, make a really good jam. And like I said, in the text there, it has 18 times more lycopene than tomatoes, which is a powerful antioxidant. So we'll go on here. Oxide Daisy, and again, it's not a damaging invasive, it's just a European species. But I felt the need to include this one because the flavor of that is just one of my favorite flavors out there. So next time you see a daisy along the road or out in the yard or wherever you happen to find them at, just grab a leaf and taste it. They're best as the basal rosette stage, but at any stage they still taste good and are edible. They've just got a really nice flavor, and they're kind of sweet. And the young flower buds, you can pickle those. That's another one that, like I said, it's naturalized. I don't think it's an environmental or an agricultural pest or anything like that. It's just more or less a introduced species that they're everywhere, and it's something. That's the thing about eating invasive and introduced species, is that there's no conservation measures that need to be taken. You can take as much as you want, and that plant's always going to be fine. Chickweed's another one of those. It's only a problem whenever it takes over your garden, and plus it's very easy to take out. You can just grab hands full of it to get it out. But if you just wait around long enough, it just dies back. as soon as everything warms up. It makes a really good pesto. I've added it a lot of times with other more flavorful, like dittany mint and other purslane and things like that have more flavor. And it's a good bulking thing for your salads. And the thing about it is you can find it just about any time of year that we've had moisture. It kind of disappears in the heat of the summer, and then when the cool weather comes back in the fall, you start finding it again. And you can find it all winter long in little protected areas around springs and sometimes under leaf litter. It's just something that it's a welcome little bit of green you can eat whenever it's dead winter, not much out. Amaranth is the next one, and it's getting a lot of attention as a kind of a pseudo grain. They call it the grain of the Aztecs because it was so heavily used there, along with what's the other one? Chenopodium, which is lamb's quarter. But you can eat the young shoots on these as a vegetable. Very young leaves you can use as a salad green, and then the seeds are kind of magic. You can actually even pop the seeds like popcorn, and or you can boil them into a mush. And there's just a lot of useful things you can do with that plant. I think it's originally from South America, and it's pretty much here by colonization, because the Native Americans, they think, brought it up here because of its usefulness. Go on again. Yellow Rocket is just kind of finishing up blooming right now. If you go into any of the foraging sites or Native Plant Society, about every third picture will be of this for a while whenever it's first coming up. It's another one of those that's just very strong if you just eat the raw leaf. They call it winter crest because if you can find a big basal rosette in the winter and collect that and boil it as a boiled green and then dress it up with balsamic vinegar and toasted sesame oil, something like that, it's really good. And if you can catch the flower heads when they're just forming, they just taste like broccoli. They're really tasty, but you have a very short window before they get extremely bitter. We were just talking, this is the locals used to call this one greasy greens, and I always thought they were saying greasy greens because everybody cooked them in bacon grease, but it was spelled with a C, so I don't know where that came from. So but next one is kudzu. We don't have a ton of that around here yet. I know it's been in Arkansas for some time, and I first became aware of it to go collect the runners for basket material. But it's a good edible also. The leaves, vine tips, flowers, and shoots are edible, and supposedly the root is edible too. It's a big starchy kind of tasteless root, but they get so big you'd take a backhoe to excavate them. So it's I've yet to try out the root on those things. But yeah, like when I first heard about it, I put it in there. It said they call it the plant that ate the South because it will literally cover an entire opening in a forest and kill trees and everything in its path pretty much. Next one is another one it's more of a agricultural pest. It's naturalized, been here long enough that it's really not too damaging in the environment. It just likes disturbed ground. And a lot of these plants, like lamb's quarter, chickweed, the curly dock, which we'll hit just a little bit of plantain. These are only here because when the Europeans came over, they didn't know what they were getting into, and they didn't know if they would know any of the plants to eat here. So they brought a lot of this stuff just because it was something they depended on in their home country. And so they brought seeds and plants and things like that. So they brought them here because they valued them so much, and so we can value them as well to use them. And the lamb's quarter is just it's in the spinach family. One of the features about it is that it's got a whitish kind of a bloom on the underside of the leaf. This plant is really good at pulling up natural salts in the soil. and you can lick the back of that leaf on that. It's almost a crystalline looking whitish powder, and it has like salt flavor. In fact, there's another plant related to this, a triplex is the genus, and the other name for it is saltbush, because it is so good at pulling salt up that it is actually, the plant is salty, and it grows in, it's a very salt tolerant and grows in real salt habitats where a lot of stuff, other stuff can't grow. Next, I'm thinking I'm getting a UPS delivery here. Japanese honeysuckle. That's another one. In fact, I didn't know the berries on this one were edible. I read that almost all Lonicera species, which are the honeysuckles, that they were all toxic. But this particular one, Lonicera japonica, is the berries are edible on it. But the young leaves can be used as a pot herb, and the flowers, a lot of people make jelly and tea and things like that out of it, out of the flowers. And I didn't include a picture of the bush honeysuckle, but it's another really terrible invasive right now. And so it is it's very, very common to collect those flowers and use those for tea or jelly, but the berries on those are toxic. And this bush honeysuckle is another one that people are spending lots of money on to try to eradicate. And it is, I live out east of Springfield, Missouri, and the drive from Springfield to my house, the entire understory along the road has been taken over by bush honeysuckle and Bradford pear. That's another one I should have included in here, the Bradford pear, because it's escaped captivity, and it's you're finding it all throughout pristine forest berries now. Sting and nettle is the next one. No, purslane. I missed that one. It's another one that's not a problem. It's been here for so long, and it is. I see it more in sidewalks in downtown than I do anywhere, but it'll pop up in gravel driveways or at the edges of your garden or in nurseries and stuff. It is it's so popular now. I'm starting to see it in farmers markets, and they sell it for a pretty good price. So it's people are figuring out that it's a really good tasting and a very healthy plant. As the text says there, it's a highest source of omega-3s of any plant, and it's just really nutrient rich and vitamin packed. So sting and nettle is next, and again, that's not one that is a problem here. You get out in Kansas and areas like that, and it is a pretty thick out there. It'll get into the edges of the ag fields, and it's not something that's desirable in their fields, so it turns out being a problem. But the young shoots and tops are delicious and really nutrient packed when used as a pot herb. You might want to use gloves to collect it because of the stinging hairs. And the way it stings you is pretty interesting. It's got, the hairs are hollow, and they are attached to a gland at the base on the leaf. And whenever they hit your skin, they actually inject a mixture of formic acid and a few other compounds that make you itch and burn for about 15 or 20 minutes. And luckily, wherever you see it, there's a remedy plant. There's a couple of them, in fact. Jewelweed, which is impatiens species, and curly dock, which is rumex. Both of those plants crushed up. You just crush the wettest part of the plant you can get and scrub it on the itching area, and it will immediately take the itch away. Might have to hit it again in a few minutes. It doesn't, it starts coming back, but it takes about 2 to 3 applications, and then it's really does take the unpleasant feeling away pretty good. And it mentions there that it's one of the best fiber for a cordage fiber, the outer fibers of the stalk are. Next, all 3 of these, I just lumped them all together. People mistake them a lot. They're all 2 of them are lamiums, another one is glaucoma. But the whole family of mints they're finding out that are extreme immune system builders. And so I read a couple of articles where about 15 years ago, fish farms in Norwegian countries started adding mint to their fish food, and it reduced the amount of disease by up to 50% or something like that. But the both dead nettle and henbit they'll occupy a pasture and just pretty much turn it purple whenever they're in bloom. A lot of people confuse because the flowers look so similar, but the dead nettle always has triangular leaves. Henbit has scalloped, and then the ground ivy is just taller, and it really doesn't look like the other two, but for some reason people kind of mistake them, but they're all three ground cover plants that'll just take your yard over. Shepherd's purse is another one of those European plants brought over here, and the young flower heads and seeds of those just taste for the world like broccoli. They're really tasty. They're just not much to them, but when it comes up, you can find a lot of them. And also the basal rosette leaves, they're real tasty. The whole plant pretty much tastes like broccoli. It gets its name from I don't know if you can see it in the picture, not the little triangular seed heads there. Somebody in Europe saw those and thought they looked like the purses, the triangular bags that the Basque shepherds used to carry their stuff when they were out for the day. So that's where it got the name shepherd's purse. And that's even reflected in the Latin name Capsella bursa pastoris, which is capsella is small capsule, bursa is bag, pastoris is relating to pasture or shepherds, or something to do with the pastoral life. So it's all about that shepherd's purse name. They're on both names. Next one is Nutsedge. A lot of people are not aware of this one. Now, this is not one that's real common, but they've exported it to other countries. In fact, they're not even completely sure where it originated. It's found all over the world. That term cosmopolitan, that's what that means. If you weren't aware, it means it's found in most countries, and it goes so far back that they're not sure of the origins. But it can produce more starts per acre than just about any other root crop, and they're quite tasty. I harvested or got some a while back and made horchata with it. So I put that recipe in the Foraging the Ozarks book. It's the only part edible are the little tiger nuts, and you can buy those. You can even buy them online. They sold commercially. They're kind of pricey, so it might want to make you want to go collect your own. Next, another plant that people spend millions of dollars every year trying to eradicate from their lawns. It's a broadleaf plantain, and you'll notice the flower spikes that come up covered with seeds. Those seeds are very nutritious, and they're also used as one of the ingredients in Metamucil, which psyllium husk, and but it's real fibrous, but it's supposedly has a lot of B12 in it, and if you keep your vitamin B12 level really high, supposedly biting insects don't like the taste of you. So it's a good thing to keep in your diet with getting a lot of that, so the mosquitoes and the chiggers will lay off of you a little bit. I don't think anything will stop ticks, but next, I probably even shouldn't have included this one because it's so small that it's pretty inconsequential. It's an interesting thing because of the flavor of it. It's in the violet family, but all the other violets I've ever tasted were just pretty mild. Just tasted, think lettuce or something real mild like that. This one has a wintergreen flavor, and it's kind of slight, but you don't get that flavor very often in nature. So I felt I ought to go ahead and leave it in here. It looks like a violet, but the two top leaves are usually dark, and the 3 bottom leaves are lighter, and then it's got stripes on the inside of the throat of it. Next one is a plant that at least our Missouri Conservation Department has spent millions of dollars trying to eradicate it from the prairies because it's decimating some of our natural prairies around here. They call it Seresia or Seresian lespedeza, and it's kind of a woody stemmed plant. Doesn't get very tall, gets about waist high at tops, but it just gets so thick that it crowds everything else out. And I wasn't aware of that being an edible until I did this program and started looking for a few other plants. And turns out that in its original country where it comes from, they eat the young shoots and the young leaves as salad greens, and they like boil the shoots as vegetable, and they collect the seeds and cook them with rice. So it's at least it has some redeeming qualities there. Next, field sorrel. That's another one that's more of a pasture and a hayfield invader. It's not too consequential because it doesn't get huge like the one next to it, the burdock, but it's another one I included because it's so tasty. It's like the oxalis family of sorrels, where it's just you bite into it and it's like biting into a lemon. So it has oxalic acid, which gives it that sour taste. And I do a mention down here: with all plants containing oxalic acid, eat sparingly. And if you have any kind of kidney problems or kidney stones or anything like that, really avoid those kind of plants. They supposedly make that condition worse. But they've got a very unusual leaf. It's a broad lance-like leaf with 2 little basal leaves off to the bottom of it there. And not much else looks like that. Burdock is the next one, and probably everybody's seen that because the leaves get so huge. See these very large lower stem leaves, and all the books said that the leaves are edible when they're young, and I have yet to find a good way to prepare them where they're worth eating. But the stems of the middle-sized leaves, before they get tough and fibrous, you can harvest those stems. And the first time I tried them, I boiled them to soften them up a little bit, and then rolled them in flour and fried them, and it was really tasty. So it was the Ozarks, so you gotta deep fry everything. So that's a good candidate for those. But the real treasure on that plant is the root. And if you go to any Asian market in season, they sell them there as gobo root, and they're exceptional tasting roots. If you're in rocky ground like we are here, it's hard to get a whole root a lot of times. But if you find them in soft ground, the root will get 2.5 feet long, and they're excellent in stir fries, and you can eat them raw, just however. They've got a great flavor and full of nutrition. So it's a good one to know. Something I didn't cover on the burdock is the plant that I can't remember the guy's name. I think I put it in the book, but he had his dog had been out and got a bunch of burdocks in its fur, and he was pulling them out. Noticed the little hooked spines on the seed head, and then got the idea to make Velcro from that plant. So that one's had a pretty big impact on a lot of people. Curly dock is another one I mentioned earlier. It's again, it's naturalized so much. It's more of a agricultural pest than anything. But I eat a lot of curly dock at this time of year. It's got a long growing season. The young basal leaves are excellent as a pot herb. The really young leaves are you can throw them right in the salad. But it's another one with oxalic acid, so you want to cook them just a little bit. The seeds, you can take the whole seeds. They've got a papery husk on them. And for a while, I was trying to winnow the paper away from the actual seed. It's a 3-cornered seed, like a buckwheat seed, because that's the family it's in. And but you can grind those and add them with other ground grains and make crackers, and and add them for like a flour additive and stuff like that, and they are full of nutrition. The crackers had a very unique flavor with when I added with about maybe 15% wheat flour, just enough to where it would hold together. But that whole family is the buckwheat family. As far as I know, everything with that family is edible. That would be all the knotweeds, which is the next plant coming up. What is it? There's a feature on a lot of those. It's where the leaf joins the main stem. A whole lot of those plants, like curly dock and several of the other ones, have a little papery sheath where the leaf joins the stem, and that's called an ochrea. And that's one of the features to look for to identify a lot of those. Now there's a vine that's a false climbing buckwheat that's a native that doesn't have that as pronounced, but it just about all the other ones, including this next one, Japanese knotweed, it has that. And you can see that plant gets really tall, really big and thick, but it is excellent. People are pickling the stems, and it's something that a lot of these, your hope is that you could just eat it into oblivion. But I don't think that's a chance, but you can. I do recommend that on plants like these, the really bad invasives, while you're out there collecting, just yank as many up as you can, or if you can get it before, knock them down before they go to seed, just anything you can to keep them from proliferating, because they are really environmentally damaging when they're in the wrong habitat. But I've heard of people making smoothies with this knotweed because it's got the lemony tart flavor, and soups. There's even making sorbet ice cream with the stems of the Japanese knotweed. So it's a very useful plant in your cooking, and when you do find it, you usually find a lot of it. So it's something you can really take advantage of. Next one is more of a garden and disturbed ground yard invader, but again, for flavor, it's one of my favorites. It's they call it shiso in Japanese cuisine, and they do shiso infused oils. There's entire cuisines built around that flavor. And one of the first things I tried to do with it whenever I was trying to figure out new ways to use all this stuff in cooking, there's a Greek dish called I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but it's stuffed grape leaves. And instead of using grape leaves with the meat and rice stuffing and everything, I use the perilla leaves because they get really huge and they taste way better than a grape leaf. They're a little flimsier, so you got to be more careful doing the wrap. But it's good for that, and I'll even put a little in the salad. It's pretty strong tasting, but it is toxic to livestock. So if you got any kind of goats, pigs, cows, whatever, it can supposedly kill those. And another name I've heard it called is beefsteak mint, and I asked why it was that, and they said pretty much anything that's big gets the name beefsteak. But they thought that this might have also, the beefsteak might have had reference to that fact that it will kill cows. So don't really know about that. That's common names. One of the hazards of that is that there's so many different ones, and they change from region to region. So pepper grass, that's a good one to pair with that the field sorrel that was earlier. It really does taste like black pepper, and you can add that or even the sorrel. There are wild sorrels, and you get a lemon pepper flavor to whatever you put it in. And again, it's more of an agricultural pest if it's a pest at all, but it's naturalized. There's a lot of different species of them. Some of them have the really peppery flavor. Other ones it's not as pronounced. But you can dry the seed on the really strong ones. You can dry those and grind it up and use it. They call it poor man's pepper. And you can do the same thing with some of the smart weeds. The next plant is another one in that same family with the polygonum, I think it is called. It's called mini knees because those joints on there look like knees. But you find this, there's one form of it called, what is it? A lady's thumb. And it's a European version with little pink flowers. It's a pretty mild one. Then you bite into some of the white flowered versions of it, and it is very sharp, very almost like a hot pepper. And I was talking to somebody from Europe that said that they've got one over there that the oils or whatever it is in that plant that makes it taste so sharp, it makes it through your GI, so it comes out the other end, and though they call it arse smart because it burns coming out. And I've yet to experience that, luckily. So next up is common teasel, and that's another one you'll just see. It'll just take over a roadside. And some of the bird research work I do is in prairies, so they're really fighting it in our native prairies around here, just because again it'll come in and take over. And come to find out, the leaves are edible. They're mostly eaten cooked, but they've got spines on them that run along the midrib, so you have to cook them till those spines are soft, or catch them real early. And it's the root and the leaves were used medicinally. Supposedly they call it Fuller's teasel because of the Latin name, but they also supposedly use that to card wool. Carding wool is just a way to get all the wool fibers going a certain direction so they can spin the fibers into yarn. And that was a easy tool they could go to if they didn't have an actual wool carding tool. And so it's useful in a lot of ways. And I've even made fire with the dried stalks. They get tall enough and stout enough that you can twirl that against a hearth board and get a friction fire with it. These wild lettuces, they're the prickly lettuce. The bottom one here is probably the one that's the most aggressive pest. It gets into ag fields and whatnot. But we do have native lettuce species as well, and our native Canada lettuce is probably the mildest. And it's the Canada lettuce, the native is, you can tell it because it has a tan to orange sap, whereas most of the other ones have a white latex sap. But they're all useful. They run from real mild to really bitter. But again, it's just more of an annoyance to farmers than a real ecological problem. And same with this next one, wild carrot. It will take over prairies, and you see it on roadsides a lot. A lot of the books recommend, if you're just learning, just stay away from the entire family of this. They used to call the family umbelliferae, and because the flowers made umbels, but they've changed that to Apiaceae. And I don't know why that name changed, but that whole family is your everything from dill to carrot, parsley, cilantro, a lot of stuff we eat. But then there's two of the most fatally toxic plants in the northern hemisphere that belong to this same family, which are poison hemlock and water hemlock. So if there's any confusion, they say just avoid that. The one thing about the wild carrot is that it does have a smell test. If you pull a root up, scratch it, it should smell like a carrot. And also the stems are always hairy. But at the very young stages, when the root is in the best stage to collect, some of those features are pretty hard to detect. That smell test is always right. But another thing to be aware is if you've already been collecting some and you have the smell on your hands, and then you pull up another root that is not wild carrot, and you might have that carrot smell on your hands, and then you smell it, and you're smelling your hands and think you're smelling the root, and you can make a mistake that way. So, but the really young roots, you can just use them just like carrots. If they get a little bigger, it's a kind of a fleshy bark around the taproot. And can peel the bark kind of off of it, the softer parts of it, and use it in soup and things like that. One of my favorite things is whenever the flower dries up. Let me get a drink of water here. When the flower dries, it makes a little cup, And so these will overwinter. The seeds will lay inside that little cup, and you can pick those out and use them for seasoning. So if you're out in winter cooking your meal and need some seasoning in it, that's a good place to get it, and they'll make it through most of the winter that way. Getting down to the near the end here, carrot versus hemlock right there. That picture, you can tell they get pretty similar. The hemlock is a little more robust and wider. The carrot is a little lacier in appearance and just a little more sparse looking. But I've seen the carrot where it was right next to poison hemlock. The carrot didn't have the hairs except on the little curved area where the leaf actually connects to the stem, and you about have to have a magnifying glass to see those. So it's something to be aware of. And like I said, if you're not sure, just stay away from it. Down here, you can see it's a smooth stalk with purple spots on it. And so when the plants are mature, you're not going to mistake the two because of that feature right there. By that stage, the Queen Anne's lace is already really hairy. And there's the poison hemlock flower where you can see the umbels are spread apart. These are umbellets. The whole thing is an umbel, and these little things are umbellets. So these are all spread apart. And on a Queen Anne's lace, they're usually packed in tight together, and they have another little floral part right there in the center. It's kind of purplish. So there was a mnemonic that a lot of people use to tell the two. The queen has hairy legs because the stems are hairy on Queen Anne's lace. I don't know if the queen would appreciate that or not, but anyway, that wraps it up for the plant stuff. And there's my information for ordering books, and if you want to contact me for programs or anything like that. And I guess I end the slideshow now.
I mean, you can leave that slide up if you want. That way people get contact information. But yeah, thank you, Beau. That was great. Really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and enter them into the chat now. We did get a few already. Rosalind Emery is wondering, how do you eat or prepare henbit or dead nettle? What's the best way for that, in your opinion?
Raw dead nettle has kind of a skunky flavor that a lot of people, another one of those you taste by itself and you wonder why people eat it. But you throw that in with other plants and it tastes really good. So I'll just pick the heads and throw them in a salad with a lot of other stuff. And by the time you dress the salad and get all the other flavors in there, it's just a real interesting note. It's also a really good pesto ingredient. And you can make pesto out of just about anything, crumble up. And if I don't have, I think the original nut with pesto was pine nuts, but I'll use pumpkin seeds, any kind of nut, seed, whatever you've got. And some kind of oil, usually olive oil or something like that, but even toasted sesame oil, and then grind up whatever flavor herbs you've got. And all of those three plants are good with that. A lot of people make tea with all three of those, but they're best mixed in with other flavors. I'm not seeing a video. How do I get back to where I'm seeing your video?
You might have to click on participants. You want to do that, or you're more than welcome to stop sharing your screen, and that should bring it back, or make your video of the participants full screen.
All right.
Shannon Chamberlain is wondering, she's concerned about, or they're concerned about poison sprays that may have been used on invasives. Do you have any concerns about that?
Yeah, if you're in a conservation area, they have been active doing that kind of stuff, but almost always you'll see signs of it. If it's close enough that they haven't showed signs, you might be smelling it. But if just collect in areas they haven't been spraying. And again, that's something, I mean, you're going to rinse that plant off usually before you eat it. And if I'm just eating a little bit of something like that, I rinse it off. Even if it had been sprayed, that wouldn't worry me as much as that if it was something I was eating every day. every plant has toxins. There's toxins in everything you eat. Your body can throw off most of that stuff, but it's still something I would really not want to put in my body. But again, I do a warning in the book about collecting next to ag areas, just to, because just be aware that they may have sprayed or something like that. And
And Shayna Sessler says sometimes they're not sure if something is curly dock or another kind of dock, or the other species of dock also safe to eat.
yes, the one most commonly I see is the curly dock is Rumex crispus. The other one is Rumex obtusifolius, which is broad-leaved or bitter dock. I don't find it many more bitter than the curly dock when it's cooked, but as far as I know, there are no, the problem with dock, the word, is that there are other completely unrelated plants referred to as dock. You got prairie dock, carpenter dock, that are both silphium and sunflower family, and not related to the curly dock at all. So that's another thing with common names, is dock just means a large leaved plant usually. And so anyway, there's nothing that I know of that's called dock that would hurt you, but the other ones they're not considered edible in the same way that curly dock and the Rumex family is considered edible. The seeds are edible and all those, but the stalks are just so woody, and the leaves they're just not that tasty. You probably wouldn't want to eat the big carpenter dock or prairie dock.
And a lot of the silphiums are native as well, like the compass plant and the prairie dock and all that. But
yeah,
I have heard of the compass plant, the resin that comes from after you remove the flower buds being chewable, and like the natives use them as like a chewing gum.
Oh yeah,
I tried that myself. Russ Cohen is wondering, what is the fruit that is pictured on the cover of your book? He doesn't recognize it.
That is, they call it ground plum. It's not a plum at all. It's in the pea family. It's actually more of a glade and prairie plant. It likes open areas, and sometimes you'll even see it along roadsides in forested areas. But if the roadside is wide enough, and it'll do well there. It's just one of the best tasting edibles I've ever tasted. It tastes like a very sweet snow pea, and the fruits are about an inch across, and it's hard to catch them because critters like them too. And but like I said, the glades are where I see them most around here. Or if you find a big bluff and it has an open area above the bluff, it'll be inhabited by a lot of glade species there. I've seen them up in that kind of habitats before. But if you really want to get into them thick, just go an hour west of here, or probably an hour or two west of where you guys are, and get over into some of the prairies in Kansas, and it's pretty common.
Is that one you're going to include in your Foraging the Tallgrass Prairie book?
Yep, it will be in that book too. There's quite a bit of crossover, so I've already got about a quarter of the book written.
That's helpful.
Yeah, so much of crossover there. But,
Petra Britton says in Germany, many people make dandelion honey, and they're wondering about, you knew anything about that?
Making dandelion honey, or using the letting your honeybees feed on it for.
I'm not sure if that's if you mix it with honey or let it infuse or something. Maybe Petra could add something in the chat to expand on their question. But they're also said they're unfamiliar with the term pot herb, and was wondering what you meant by that term.
Pot herb is just any plant you have to cook, or a lot of times you don't have to cook it, but it makes it more palatable. In some cases, like stinging nettle, of course, those stinging hairs are going to be real uncomfortable in your mouth, so you cook those to soften the hairs. In plants like curly dock and some of the other ones, wintercress and some of the mustards, they're kind of bitter, and the cooking removes the bitterness. Sometimes it's because the plant is very toxic, as in one that I grew up with called pokeweed. And that plant, it would make you quite sick. They call it poke salad, as in SALAD, and that is not what it's supposed to be. It is poke salad, which is spelled SALLET or SALAT, and that's a French term for cooked green. And that's a plant you always want to cook because it has I can't even pronounce the toxin, but it's a phytolactotoxin, I think is what it's called. And if you do cook it, and if you don't cook it well enough, it's like taking a whole box of X-Lax. It's very unpleasant. It will clean you out real well. But the berries, the seeds inside the berries are very toxic, and they've had instances of toddlers eating 4 or 5 berries and dying. Wow. So it's and they're really pretty purple berries. They're quite attractive, and something that a little kid might be really attracted to. So see here, I had a neighbor's grandmother who made poke salad, but no one's been able to try it, brave enough to try it since. Well, like I said, I grew up on that, and my mom always just boil it. You pick them when they're 6 inches tall as a shoot, and you can eat the whole shoot, or once they get about knee to waist high, then just take the very top little leaves off of it. And if you do that, you can get by with one boiling. If you're a little nervous about it, a lot of times I suggest doing a quick, like a parboil first, changing the water out, and then doing another good boiling, and that will remove any of the toxin. But there's so many warnings about it, and people are just afraid to try it because of that. And you're just passing up one of the best tasting greens out there. I think they're just really, really nice taste and good texture. And yes, I do have recipes in the book. I've kind of turned into a foodie in the last 10, 15, 20 years or so. And I wanted to include something beyond seasoned boiled greens, so there's a lot of the things in there are more or less foodie recipes. There's even a cocktail recipe. But that's whenever I got into foraging, my first introduction to it was from my mom, but she didn't have a big number of plants she knew. She probably knew a dozen or so plants: curly dock, lamb's quarter, the poke, watercress, just all the kind of normal stuff that if you forage at all, you probably know those. And but when I got into the wilderness survival, my whole aspect of it was just wanting to know how I could feed myself when I was out in the field for an extended time. So it was just, eating what you had that was out there just to keep you alive. And then after I got older and got more into cooking a lot, now it's more of all of the crazy, really interesting flavors that you can get that you cannot buy in the store. And chefs are really figuring this out now. There's a whole new world of chefs that are incorporating wild foraged goods, and so it's getting more popular with the culinary aspect of it. There's somebody here in town, Rachel Elizabeth. She's doing a lot of programs where she cooks for people and does a lot with it.
I think she has a page called Eat the Ozarks or something like that.
Yeah, eating the Ozarks.
Yeah. Petra expanded on the dandelion honey. Let's see, I had it here. The flour is boiled and a syrup is made from it. That's what Petra said.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've done a root syrup. If you take the root and grind it and roast it, and then make a tea with that, and then make a syrup, cook, add sugar and boil that down, it tastes like Kahlua. It's a coffee flavored, really rich flavored syrup, and it works well for like a meat drizzle, or just use it wherever you use, like over ice cream or something like that. And I've not done it with the flowers, so I don't have any experience with that. Like I said, it's related to another plant called chicory. which if you've ever been down south into Louisiana and around the Cajun area down there, they call it Cajun coffee. And it's the dandelion tribe is that whole bunch of aster family. That's what is it? Foul thistle is one, wild lettuce, chicory, and dandelion. There's a few others, but they all have the white milky sap, and they all tend to have a really bitter root that is a coffee substitute. And but I've heard of people pickling the buds. You can take the young dandelion buds and just save your old pickle juice and then stick the dandelion buds in there, and it preserves flavor, and you can just eat them like pickle or use them as a condiment after that. There's tons of things that you can do with plants that instead of just nibbling and picking and eating, you can, like I said, there's so many things that you can pickle. You can dehydrate, you can make a seasoning ash with a lot of the like wild garlics and things like that, where you just dry the plant to where it's where you can just crumble it up, and then you crumble that and it retains the flavor, and you can just sprinkle that over your food to preserve the flavor a little bit. I'm looking at another comment here about do you think that harvesting invasive species to eat them is an effective control measure? I agree, it is not a good control measure. But while you're out, if you're going to be out foraging anyway, and you're out there, like with garlic mustard, every time I'm out and I see it, I yank it up out of the ground and haul it out to somewhere to where it can't get back into the ground. And it just, every little bit helps. But your main goal out here is to get some food and not rely on eating our native species. So you put all your efforts into these plants, and also there's a lot of misconceptions about foraging in general. I get some people that aren't familiar with it that they just think you're out there just mowing down and killing and eating everything out there. And if the entire world's population or United States population couldn't buy food tomorrow and went out and tried to forage and feed themselves, there's too many people to probably do that, without help, without doing a lot of growing. But so a lot of it is just making people aware of all of the different things that are out there that you can eat, and also encouraging people to the good stuff, the good natives when you're out collecting. And if it's in seed, take those seeds home with you. Try to start a little wild food natives garden, or put them somewhere else that another habitat where you think they might do well, and help them out that way. And then likewise on the kind of bad invasive stuff, if you're out there collecting stuff, just grab it and take it down with you. With the things like in the autumn olive, I've got several bushes that are growing on my property here, and I thought about cutting them down, but then I go out every year and I just collect all the fruits that are on it. And I know a bird's probably, several birds have probably got one or two and spread them around still. But you're still taking its means of spreading itself away. And but a lot of people will, they'll take all the berries and then cut the tree down, or dig it up or something like that. But a lot of this stuff, it's if you're going to control it, you have to have that as your main goal. Your foraging is just a side bin. While you're out there, you might as well get some benefit out of these things. But to actually control anything, it's a battle. I mean, you really have to stay ahead of everything.
Definitely. Every little bit helps. And, like you're saying, I mean, it does, especially if you're finding where maybe some invasive that have just started taking hold in an area, just nip it in the bud.
Yeah.
If they're edible. I mean, that's, it's having, even if it's a small impact, and you multiply that times a bunch of people doing this, and it adds up. It's definitely, like you say, not the best method of controlling invasives, but that combined with other methods, could make a difference. Cheryl is asking, is false garlic toxic? I believe is that the same one as crow poison?
No, crow poison. Well, it might be. I've never heard the term crow poison, but I've heard crow garlic in reference to allium vanille, which is our most common wild I guess wild garlic, wild onion. There's a lot of arguments on what's a garlic and what's an onion. They're all allium species, but false garlic is toxic. That's no, I think it's Nothiscordum bivalve, and it really does have garlic-like leaves and flowers, and it will grow in the same place. In fact, I've seen it growing next to our native wild onion. They call it glade onion, but it is toxic, and I don't think it's something that'll kill you. It will just cause a little bit of stomach upset.
Well, I wonder if it kills crows. Yeah, I googled the Nothiscorium bivalve, and yeah, crow poison is another common name for that one. So maybe somebody has observed some crows trying to eat it, maybe getting sick or something. I don't know. Cleo, this is gonna be the last question, and then we'll have to give the outro. But Cleo is asking about Seresia lespedeza. They're wondering if it's found in Missouri, and I believe you said it was.
Oh yeah, yeah. In fact, I do. I said conservation department, and one of them is doing grassland birds at the Burdock conservation area, and they spend hours and days and lots of money and control measures trying to stay ahead of the Seresia, and the other one that gets out there is the autumn olive. So privet, that's somebody mentioned privet. That's one I didn't mention in here, but yeah, I hadn't even looked.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the privet. Do you know if that has any edible or medicinal uses?
You know, I've not even looked into that one. It's not one that I have common around here. I see it occasionally, but it's not a problem here yet. I mean, in the areas that I've seen right around here.
I know it's around here in Northwest Arkansas, so it might be on its way up there. I see it a lot, just mostly like in the urban areas that have wooded lots and stuff, and it seems like really.
Yeah, I do see it in those.
Story.
Yeah, I've seen it in closer to inhabited areas, but as far as getting out into the pristine areas like the winter creeper and bush honeysuckle stuff, it's nowhere near as bad as those plants.
And I believe Seresia lespedeza used to be planted as a forage, right, for farm animals.
Yeah, it's a good, supposedly a good livestock forage.
No, so yeah, just gets out, and even like RDOT and other DOTs use a different form of lespedeza. The Korean and the Japanese lespedezas are in their seed mixes, so at least they're not using the Seresia kind. But from what I see, it still seems to take over. Maybe not quite as aggressive, but we do have native lespedezas, and I wonder if those would be as effective for erosion control as some of the non-natives or not. But Beau, we really do appreciate you sharing your time and expertise with us. This has been really great. I've got some great comments in the chat. A lot of people really enjoyed your talk. So I want to thank everyone again for being here with us today. Again, the recording of this webinar will be placed on or uploaded to our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and type in Arkansas Native Plant Society, you'll be able to find this one along with the other webinars we're having as part of our celebration of Arkansas Native Plant Month. Tomorrow, Jay Justice will be giving a talk at 1 p.m. on Who's on Top, an overview of the known associations between plants and fungi. You can find out more information about the Arkansas Native Plant Society at amps.org. You can join on our website. Just go to our website and click on join or become a member. You can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Arkansas Native Plant Society, or you're more than welcome to reach out to me at amps.president@gmail.com. Again, I want to encourage you to go onto our silent auction website, biddingnow.com/ANPS. A lot of great stuff up there that you can have a chance to win. Beau, thank you again. We really appreciate you.
Thank you very much. And I think I've had my order information for the book up there. If any of you don't have it, buy it for me instead of Jeff Bezos. He's rich enough.
Yeah, Beau makes more when he sells them directly to people. So buy it from him directly. It helps him out too. So
and you can get signed copies as well.
Yes, yeah, and yeah, let us know next time you're doing another foraging event down here. I know in June we're going to be doing another one for Appleseed's teaching farm. So
yes,
if you want a chance to meet Beau and have him sign your copy of the book, you should go to that. And yeah, I'm sure he'll have copies of his book there to sell as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.